adjust this to the depth you want it, and then go. There is markings on this somewhere. They are hard to see, they always have been. And I'm going to be using my Alaska sawmill up at my camp/homestead. I'm down home right now in my garage. I am going to get the chainsaw ready, get it mounted, because I don't really have a workbench up there or anything yet. That will be coming. But as of right now, it's easier just to do it in here where I have all my tools and everything handy. I do have a 24-inch rip chain that I'm going to use, and I'll probably leave it right on this saw for a while. The difference between a rip and a regular, here, I'll get one so you can see here. There's the rip. Now these are the two chains. The top one is a regular chain. The bottom one is a rip chain. If you look at the chains, you notice that the top one, the teeth are a lot, they seem to be wider. There seem to be more teeth there. And they're also sharpened at about a 30-degree angle. The bottom one is the rip one. They are more narrower. And they are sharpened at about a 10-degree angle. Okay, next step is to put the chain on. This is like I've went over before. This is a rip chain. I'm putting it on my Echo Timberwolf CS-590. It seems to work okay with it. Now, if you're getting ready to use a chainsaw mill, I'm assuming you already know the steps in order to get the chainsaw itself ready. What I'm going to do is get everything set up so I'm ready to run the chainsaw mill before I get up to camp, because, you know, my seasonal camp, why I am trying to make it into a homestead is right now it's so hard to stay in the winter up there. It's just an outhouse, which is fine for me. The women aren't very happy with an outhouse. And also, I don't have any indoor water this time of the year, so it makes it a little bit harder too, because I have to carry water. So that means when I leave, I have to empty all the water because I don't heat the place. All I have is a wood burning stove in there, one baseboard heater, and one of those indoor propane heaters, vent-free ones. That's it, and it's not many BTUs. It barely keeps it warm enough. Anything below 30 degrees, I make sure I start the wood burner. Above 30, it gets too hot, but when I first get up there, it takes me 2 to 3 hours to heat the whole place up naturally because it's so cold. Okay, the first step has been completed. The chainsaw is ready to go. The rip chain is on. Now I'm going to put it aside and get the Alaska sawmill jig out. Okay, the nuts and bolts and everything on this jig can be tightened and loosened with your chainsaw wrench. It's the same one that came with the chainsaw. These four right here will adjust the height of the bar. These four here will adjust the saw width, the saw blade. Probably the last thing I cut with this was a 20-inch. Now I have a 24-inch. I think we'll go ahead and get it mounted. Or to mount it, you have to take these ones off first. Now these are the 2 bolts in the front and the 2 bolts in the back. They actually hold the saw onto the jig. So if you take these off first in order to mount it. I haven't used this for a couple years. Last time I used it, we took down a few hemlocks, big ones. And I ended up cutting them just into beams. I still have them. I cut them into like a 1-foot beam so I can cut them down later to what I needed. Cutting now because I want some live edges on my project. I have found this project is a lot easier to do when you're on a workbench. I have done it on the back of my pickup truck and the tailgate. I've tried to put it on the ground. Putting it on a workbench is the best way. I found it easier to take these off first and just lay this on top and then put the bolts into the other one when I get it ready. You have to have it centered so much. This end piece here, you have to be careful. This one can go pretty tight up into there. You can't go past those bars. This one, you don't want too far towards the end, because what happens, it has a tendency to smash this edge that this chain rides in, and then the chain gets caught. So I always put it on back behind it, just a little bit to ensure that I don't get caught. As you see, I do have adjustment a little bit. This is a 24-inch, and I was using a 20-inch bar on it last time. Now I could make it a 20-inch too, but being as I have a little bit extra, I might as well use the extra. First thing I'm going to do is get these bolts started. The bolts never seem easy to start. That's one of the reasons why I like to have it on a workbench versus the ground or even the tailgate. It always seems like the front bolts are the hardest to get started due to that chain guard. Now there's a slide in the middle. You got to try to keep that in the middle of the chain. Here is a close-up of the guide in the middle of the chain bar. Now this, I am going to adjust this out a little bit. As you can see, it's way back into here. This is a bigger saw, so I'll be able to get a wider cut. So I will adjust it out some. In order to move this down to fit the longer bar, I have to loosen up the two end bolts and then the middle screw there. That screw is in the block. It kind of just holds that little bar and keeps it kind of straightened out. Now after that, I'm going to start the other two bolts that hold the guard on too, and the bottom block. Now, those are usually hard for me to start, but they kind of went kind of easy this time. I don't know why, but I got them in. The next step will be to make sure everything is square so it doesn't move around any. Now that everything's properly lined up, once it's properly lined up, I can start tightening everything down. I'll give it a pretty good look and a little torque here. Sometimes I forget to tighten that metal screw or the middle screw there on the bar. Now, while you're tightening this down, you want to make sure the position, and you tighten them down evenly, the position of that plate, bottom plate is in the center of the bar. Now the positioning of these bars or clamps or however you want to put it is very important to the operation of the chain. It won't run if not on properly. Once I tighten it down to get everything tight, I'm going to flip it on its side to check the chain to make sure that the chain is moving correctly, and guess what? It's not. As I've said before, if something isn't on just right, it will not operate right. And you see when I tighten this down, it's binding up the chain. So what I'm going to have to do is move this whole assembly a little bit further back. This is too far to the front, it's binding up. I'm going to go further back. Now when you're mounting this saw, it's very important you make sure you have movement on your chain. If it's too tight, you're gonna ruin something. It's not gonna work properly. So that's where I seem to have the most adjustments whenever I'm doing this. There is a little bit of a block down there. I'll take pictures of the blocks. And put them all on here too so you can see. Now it seems like it moves fine. I'm gonna tighten it up a little bit more. I don't want to over tighten those, but now it's nice and tight and the chain is still moving. So that's good. Now if you see, my cut I can do in the middle is only about 17.5 inches. That's the biggest cut I can get. 17.5. So that's what I have to watch for. I mean, I do have just a beam cutter up there. It's a camp. It's not quite as hard to set up as this. As I said, you want to make sure everything's tight and not over tightened. You don't want that slipping around on you. And you want to make sure this chain moves. If you get it too close to the end, it just won't move. It's something I've had to fight with the entire time. It's just nothing new. As you flip it up here, this right here, adjust your depth. You see these screws right here. This whole bar will move up, so this will ride on. This will ride on something flat and give you a pretty decent cut. I mean, it's not perfect, but then again, I don't need perfect up there. I'm just trying to look for get some live edge so I can use it inside my new building, make it look unique. We all want uniqueness. I am looking for some uniqueness. And yeah, I can turn this around and get some better pictures for you. I don't know whether you can see it. There's one of those guides in the middle. That's what you have to put on. You have to make sure they're in the middle. That's very important. And I'll take some pictures of them. But as you can see, this is ready to go. The chain moves. I guess I could. Another issue you have sometimes with these is getting them started, because it's not the most comfortable position to get them started, but you still can. I mean, you want to make sure it's filled up before you start cutting. You don't want to run out in the middle of a cut. And I do use wedges. As I go along, I'll put wedges in. One time I had somebody help me put wedges in, and they put them in too tight, which caused the wood to bow up, which caused this to cut weird. So when you put in wedges, I do have wedges in here, make sure you just slide them in. You don't put them in too tight. There's the wedges. You don't want them too tight, because too tight, it won't work. Any questions, please leave a comment. I'll answer anything I can. The next step we'll be taking up there, setting up the first cut is always the hardest. Then once you get the first cut, you can pretty much adjust this to the depth you want it, and then go. There is markings on this somewhere. They are hard to see. They always have been. The markings on it, as far as for the depth, are right here. For the depth here, and you have the same markings on this side, so you can get it level. So you don't have to measure each one. You can go by these. As you can see, these markings are awfully hard to see, but you can see them. These Alaskan sawmills do work okay. Mounting is very, very important, so please don't overlook the mounting of it. That's what happens to a lot of people, and me included. But thank you for viewing, and if you have subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, think about it. And once again, this is the old man with the plan. I'll see you later.